To this week's Premier League Express. Kay Murray working on other ESPN projects for the next couple of days. So Janusz and myself will look back at the weekend, and we have Spurs and Arsenal and Man City and Liverpool in the top four. And Manchester City have lost back-to-back games for the first time in the Premier League since 2018. Should City fans be worried? Janusz.
We've seen this movie before, and I think they can trust Pep Guardiola. They can trust their players. They know what they normally do in the second half of the season. I think they will deliberately make sure that when Kevin De Bruyne is ready and 100%, he's going to be back in the game. They've seen that they do have one player that's irreplaceable, and that's Rodri.
Yes.
In his absence, they lost the games. I've made a point here, and somebody corrected me right away. I don't know, may have been Kay, when I said that there are no players that are irreplaceable, because I just forgot about Rodri, didn't even think of it. But that's true in so many ways. But I don't think I'd worry about that, because they have proven in the past that once they get the rhythm, and as I've said, for me, for teams like Manchester City or for the biggest teams in the world, the season starts when the international windows close, because up until then, you can never find the flow and rhythm of the season. And this year, you have three of those breaks, because last year, remember, well, I guess the World Cup was such a massive break, and it was an issue for Manchester City to a degree. And I think some of these breaks are as well. John Stones is back. I think he's going to work himself into shape. I think they have so many different options that I reserve the right to talk about their issues for a little bit later. However, it's worth pointing out that this is a different Manchester City. And what would worry me just a little bit until De Bruyne gets back, we saw that lack of creativity. Four shots on goal, some issues. Haaland and with Haaland without really any chances because of the mistakes that Pep Guardiola made ahead of this game, because he certainly contributed in a big way in terms of tactics in that loss as well. So I want to give Arsenal a lot of credit for the way they defended, but I've said this before yesterday, but I'll repeat it for the new viewers. You know, when you go into a game against Arsenal and your strength is in wide areas, always has been, and you're facing an Arsenal team without two key players in a wide area, and that's Saka and Martinelli, because Martinelli didn't start the game, and you choose to battle it out in the center of the pitch, making it easier for Arsenal, then that's on you, and that was on Pep Guardiola, because why not release Walker and Guardiola playing out as a left back? That's an issue in its own. So I think Pep missed a trick there.
So City are third right now. I'm going to read you their next 6 games in the Premier League, and then I want you to tell me where you think they'll be after these 6. Brighton, Manchester United, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Liverpool, Spurs. That's quite a run.
It is quite a run. And look, I'll spin this differently, because I don't want to say it doesn't matter where, how many of those games they're going to win. For me to believe that the likes of Arsenal, and I'll throw Liverpool in there because I think those two can push Manchester City. Look, when we're talking about March or April, unless one of those two teams is, say, 9 points ahead, even games, because we've seen in the past, only then will I worry about Manchester City. I think if they stay within, we know those runs will happen for Manchester City. They're that capable. I think it's easy for us to go into these last 3 or 4 games, because they've lost 3 out of 4 in all competitions. And I think you notice that nobody's pushing that panic button. In the past, they have. Even last season, I think some teams have, although they had games in hand. So I don't see that, because that's how much I trust in this manager, and Pep Guardiola, and this team. So I don't think it's an issue. But things become tenuous sometimes. And if you go to Old Trafford and you lose that game to the Manchester United, as we see him right now, I think the alarm bells are going to sound a little bit, because I think it's okay to question not necessarily the lack of that creativity, but I think the hole left by Gundogan and Mahrez hasn't been filled just yet. But let's see what Grealish is. Had a bad start last season, came good, right? Doku, I think we've seen some good stuff from him already, and I still trust that the John Stoneses and everybody else that's kind of slowly getting back into shape are going to be fine. And De Bruyne, of course, is still to come. But these teams have to be, I almost want to say, miles ahead in March, April, before I even start believing that Manchester City can lose the title.
Yeah, I suppose to give you this analogy, they're like a world-class sprinter that always finds a way to finish fast. It's how much of a gap they've got to make up. And right now, it's just a 2-point gap to Spurs and Arsenal. So let's move our attention onto the two teams from North London. Pretty much identical records. They've both played 8, they've both won 6, they've both drawn 2, and they've both got a goal difference of +10. Arsenal were over the course last year. Spurs, I think it's disrespectful to call them a flash in the pan, because what we've seen so far, they've been able to find a way. They found a way at Arsenal to get a 2-2 draw. So again, here's a 2-part question for you. Arsenal, are they, again, the biggest title contenders for Manchester City? And can they go and win the title? And secondly, Spurs, can we see them hanging around and competing for the title once we get to 8 games left, not 8 games gone?
Well, Arsenal, I think I explained. I think Arsenal and Liverpool are, to me, the two teams that are going to push Manchester City. And if Manchester City slips up, I think one of those teams will take advantage.
So not Spurs. Not Spurs then?
No, because, look, I love Ange. I love what he's doing. Who they beat so far?
But they're there. They're top of the league. You can't just write them off.
No, but I can wait to see, because they're looking at a pretty good run right now. Because up until now, other than Liverpool, and by the way, I think if it wasn't for the sending off, Liverpool were going to win that game. I almost think that with 10 men, Liverpool doesn't lose.
Well, it was the offside goal, wasn't it? That was the story from that one.
Well, and Liverpool was looking to me like they were the better team. That's the only test they've had. Everything else,
but he was the same as Celtic. He finds a way to get results, Ange. And in a Premier League that's so tight, I mean, look at City going to Wolves and losing.
You can push back on me all you want, but I'm not. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to push back at you. They haven't played.
Fine.
I need to see them play against top teams week after week, and we haven't seen it. They got great points, but they haven't really played top teams in the Premier League just yet. It's a great start. And if I see that they can continue doing that, then I'll believe, because it's still a team that's probably 1 or 2 injuries away from being in trouble, because the squad isn't there. Ange just started this. Ange is where Mikel Arteta was a couple of years ago when he started. Of course, he was better, because Arteta, a couple of seasons, they finished 8th, I think. So it took him a little bit longer. But you're asking Spurs to all of a sudden, out of nowhere, go and in those games, by the way, defensively, I give him a lot of credit, because this is basically brand new back 5 if you include the goalkeeper. Romero is the only one who's been playing well, but they're still conceding goals, not playing top competition just yet, and the depth isn't there. And it's a great story, but as those stories go, unless you're telling me that they're gonna pretty much have to run the table. I mean, in order to unseat Manchester City, they can afford, in my opinion, 3-4 losses. If you've seen as much already, Mark, then fair play to you.
I'm playing devil's advocate. I remember 12 months ago sitting, whether it was with you, with Stevie, with Shaka, or with others, and they weren't having Arsenal as title contenders. And Arsenal did pretty well up until they probably overachieved. And one thing I find interesting about Spurs is, with Harry Kane gone, they've won 6 and drawn 2. The 2 draws were the 2 all-away games at Arsenal against Brentford as well. How different would it have been with kind of Harry Kane in there if they hadn't have sold him? What would Maddison be up to? Who would play on that left-hand side? Would it still be Son? So, yeah, it is what it is. And I think it's a great story. And I think it's refreshing that we have Spurs and Arsenal, 2 North London rivals, ahead of Manchester City right now. Liverpool looking good when they go forward. So, yeah, it's a decent top 4. But is it your top 4 at the end of the season? In which order have you got it right now?
Right now, I have still Manchester City first. You know, I'm fighting with myself who's going to be second or third, either Arsenal or Liverpool. At this moment, after a big win like this and Liverpool dropping points, I think it would be wise for me to say that Arsenal finishes second, Liverpool third. That has not changed. That's from what I've said last week. Last week, I still had small belief, for Manchester United, and it's a big win. However,
you're changing every week now. Is that how this works? Are you doing what Shaka does? And just okay.
I think I've done it every week so far. So but just because you're pulling for Spurs, I'm going to give it to them at this moment because they're top of the league. So I'm going to give them a fourth spot right now, simply because I like the environment. See, to me, what Ange has done is created a happy environment for players. You can see that they're enjoying playing for each other. It's attacking football. Fans are happy right now. And to me, this is the basic, the foundation of any team that can be successful in any sport. So I'll give it to them. And I think I have to, because they're at the top of the league right now. So I'll give them the fourth spot ahead of instead of Manchester United from last week.
Yeah, you're very generous. You're very generous. And the Spurs fans, they thank you for that. But they want more than fourth. They want to be title contenders. I'm just going to throw one in at you right here. Who finishes higher this season between two teams that have had issues so far, Chelsea or Manchester United?
I still think Manchester United. I mean, both not far away. I mean, everybody's been losing their mind. And I think for a while, I've been saying, just hold on. As bad as it was, it's going to get better. And it has for Chelsea, because it has to. There's still enough talent, too much talent. Same with Chelsea, for them not to be around that fourth spot somewhere in there. And if you look at the table and you look at the differences, how far away they are, they're not that far away. And we've just started the season. So, but I still think that Manchester United has a little bit more talent. And the reason I'm skeptical about Chelsea, because they're so young. And I think for Pochettino, he said it as much, I think, recently, finally, because I don't think Graham Potter ever admitted to the fact, or he was afraid to stand up to the hierarchy to say that they're young, they're too young. And look at the number of young players he has every week. Although he's going to get some players back, that creates a problem in itself, because all the players that he's getting back, they're pretty young as well. So inconsistency in lineups and all that, it would seem to me that Manchester United would, if I had to put a small bet on it at this stage.
I think if you asked anybody, give me the top three goal scorers in the Premier League right now, and this is how I want to end it, with the best of the rest. Not many would say Brighton, Aston Villa, and Newcastle in there. So I'm sure all three would love to be in contention for a Champions League spot, especially Newcastle, who did it last season and had that brilliant win over PSG. But when you look at Villa, and they're kind of going quietly about their business under Unai Emery with that 6-1 win over De Zerbi's Brighton. You look at Newcastle as well, and whether or not they can have the squad that's going to be able to cope with both Champions League and the Cup competitions and the Premier League. Out of those three, the top three highest scoring teams so far in the Premier League, Brighton, Villa, and Newcastle. Who do you like to finish highest out of those three?
Newcastle, and I was skeptical. I almost put them at number 4, and I could. I mean, massive wins in the Champions League, follow up by this comeback, which is very, very important, right? It's not like they played great, but just the fact that they found it, Isak scoring a couple goals, which is important as well, because he was off a little bit as well. So Newcastle very shortly probably are going to be there or thereabout. So that's one. I think Villa are a little bit inconsistent, it has to be said, although I tell you what, in transition on a counter, maybe the best in the league. I mean, the pace and the way they break, I mean, it's tremendous. They'll get defense back in a way, although obviously they have various options as well. So Brighton, this is Brighton. With all these young players, we get excited. I think there's very little pushback in terms of Brighton when they do have games like against Liverpool, or, for example, that loss to Villa, because I don't want to say nobody cares, but they're always going to get the benefit of the doubt, because they're not expected to go beyond certain level. I think within the club maybe there's an expectation, but for all the rest of us there isn't. So Brighton's going to be continue to be a great story, but there's definitely a ceiling in terms of what they can do, and I don't think they're going to go above that ceiling. So in those three, I would say Newcastle, Aston Villa, and Brighton.
Okay, let's wrap this up with Manchester United. I know you like talking about them, and I know you've spoken last week with Kay. You were saying potentially top four. Obviously, the way that the games are and the results are, it's like 1 week you're, what's it Piers Morgan says? 1 week you're the cock of the north, the next you're a feather duster. Give us, for Manchester United fans, a kind of a positive summation of where you think they will find themselves after a few games following the international break. Now they've got a couple of weeks to try and sort things out.
Well, psychology of this last win is not lost on anyone. Because I've said Ten Hag probably went straight to church, and after the but seriously, because this.
No, I thought that was actually quite a funny tweet from you.
Imagine the conversation we'd be having right now about Manchester United, about Ten Hag, and what may or may not happen. The feeling in that dressing room would have been obviously not only opposite, but would be even lower than that. So that's key. Underperforming, I think it's okay for us to ask questions of Ten Hag, and this is the first time that I'm asking those questions because he's going to have to fix that very, very quickly. The problem I have with Ten Hag and Manchester United is that I don't really know what they're good at. There isn't one thing that stands out. If you had to push me, I can't find one thing that Manchester, and it's easy to say that the identity, but even if they had, it's bigger than identity, because the midfielders we've seen, I mean, it was so easily bypassed. It was, by Brentford. It was unbelievable how easy it was. They have zero team pace. If you take away Rashford, and even Rashford, he looks like he's doing us a favor that he's playing from time to time. That's a side story. And we've talked about Rashford, the ups and downs of his career as well. And he's no longer young. We've talked about he's 25 years old. I want consistency. We saw that last season, but I think the last season was to a degree very, very deceptive, because I think everybody thought that Manchester United were going to go from strength to strength, and we're finding out that maybe it was a little bit too much and the expectations were a little bit too high.
We end with Manchester United as the international break is now in full swing. This is the first of 3 ESPNFC lives this week. We'll be back on Thursday and Friday with a look ahead to the big games, and Scott McTominay, a hero for Scotland, a hero for Manchester United. We just need to avoid defeat to Spain, or lose by 1 goal, and then we could be qualified. Tell you what, it could be a big week. We'll have full reaction with Janusz and the rest of the ESPNFC team, both on ESPNFC Live on Thursday and Friday. And remember, ESPNFC every single night on ESPN Plus in the United States, 6 p.m. during the week and 5 p.m. at weekends. Scotland are going to win the Euros, Janusz. And then we'll host it.
That's incredible. I mean, McTominay is back in scoring. I mean, he's your best goal scorer anyway. So Spain has some issues injury-wise, but still, Spain. It's going to be. Who are they? It's
come
on, 5-0 to Spain. No,
don't you? We beat them 2-0. Rodri said we played horrid, the horrible style. Come on, son.
That only, Mark, that only happens once in your lifetime. It'll never happen again. And I love Scotland, as you know, but I said no. I 5-0. That's too much. But 3-0 Spain in that game. No, I mean honestly, like if you had to bet, if you had to put a small wager on it,
Janusz, we're going to Germany. And then we'll ask.
Oh no, and I'm happy. Listen, just to have a go at you just a little bit for fun. And I hope that Scotland. I mean, I know you're going to go. It's going to be great atmosphere as always. Yes. It's going to be special. But I think in this particular game, I think that win is going to the win at home is going to be costly. 3-0. That even with the injuries that Spain have. That's where I'm standing.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to have a word.
Lunch at ESPN at the cafeteria, 3-0.
I'll tell you what. I'm going to have a word with producer Rob and producer Sam and see if we can do a Burley, Nickel, and Donaldson on tour in Germany next year, supporting Scotland at the Euros. Looking forward to the international break. Keep it here, ESPNFC, and our live stream on YouTube. Bye for now.